The stars looked peaceful that night when the first alien ship appeared above Earth. Commander Vorth stood on the bridge of his bioship watching the small blue planet spinning below. His kind had done this 47 times before, and it always ended the same way. The weak species would panic, fight briefly, then surrender when they saw the true power of the Korthic Dominion. These humans looked especially weak. They had soft skin with no armor, no natural weapons, no acid blood or poison claws. Their ships were made of metal instead of living tissue. Their technology was primitive and their military was scattered across their single world, the Korthic. Scouts had watched them for months and found nothing impressive. "Look at them," Vorth said to his second officer. "They think reaching their moon was a great achievement. They celebrate like children who learn to walk." The second officer clicked, his mandibles in agreement. "Their neural patterns will strengthen our bioships. Their genetic material will improve our next generation. They breed quickly and in large numbers." Vorth had seen the reports. Humans had no telepathic abilities, no enhanced strength, no special powers at all. They were just another species of prey animals waiting to be harvested. The Korthic had perfected this process over 3 centuries. First, they would destroy the military forces to break the species' will to fight. Then they would begin collecting specimens for processing. The attack began at dawn Earth time. 17 Korthic bioships descended from orbit like living nightmares. Their organic hulls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that had terrified countless species before. Plasma cannons grew from their sides like tumors, charging with energy that could melt mountains. Admiral Rebecca North was drinking coffee in her command center when the alerts started screaming. She had been expecting this day for years, but seeing it happen still made her blood run cold. The alien ships moved with fluid grace, their weapons cutting through Earth's orbital stations like hot knives through butter. "Ma'am, we're losing contact with Luna Base," her aide reported. "The aliens are hitting everything in orbit first." North watched the screens showing humanity's greatest achievements being destroyed in minutes. The space stations that had taken decades to build were becoming clouds of glowing debris. The lunar colony that housed 50,000 people was opening to space like a broken egg. "They're not trying to communicate," North said. "No demands, no warnings, nothing. They're just, taking what they want." The truth was worse than she imagined. The Korthic weren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They were harvesters. They had turned war into a business, collecting intelligent species like farmers collecting crops. Every human they captured would be processed, their minds and bodies used to strengthen the Dominion. Transport pods began dropping from the bioships like seeds from a dying tree. Each pod could hold hundreds of humans, and they were designed to break the will of any species that resisted. The pods would land in populated areas, extending tentacles that could paralyze their targets or simply grab them whole. The first pod landed in New York City during rush hour. Office workers looked up at the sky to see a massive organic shape descending toward them. When it touched down, the pod opened like a flower and creatures in biosuits emerged. They moved with mechanical precision, stunning humans with energy weapons and loading them into collection chambers. Those who tried to fight back were vaporized instantly. The Korthic had learned that destroying a few resistors made the rest more cooperative. Fear was a tool they used as skillfully as their plasma cannons. By noon, pods were landing in every major city on Earth. The Korthic worked with terrifying efficiency, their biosuits protecting them from human weapons while their technology made resistance seem hopeless. Military forces that tried to fight bound, their bullets bouncing off alien armor while return fire turned their vehicles into molten slag. "Sir, we're getting reports from every continent," the communications officer said. "They're not targeting military installations anymore. They're going after population centers." North understood what was happening. The aliens weren't trying to conquer Earth in any traditional sense. They were harvesting humans like livestock. The military bases were ignored because they contained nothing the Korthic wanted. They only cared about the soft, vulnerable civilians who couldn't fight back. The videos coming from the attack sites were horrible to watch. Humans were being processed like cattle, sorted by age and health, then loaded into transport pods. Families was separated without thought, children crying for parents who were already being taken to different ships. The Korthek workers showed no emotion, no hesitation, no mercy. "Ma'am, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the alien ships," the sensor officer reported. "They're not just taking people, they're scanning the survivors, measuring their neural activity." North felt her blood turn to ice. The aliens were studying humanity like scientists studying laboratory animals. They were learning about human psychology, human behavior, human weaknesses. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a systematic breakdown of everything that made humans human. The worst part was how easy it seemed for them. The Korthak had clearly done this before many times. They moved with the confidence of experts, their bioships working in perfect coordination. Every human defense was anticipated and countered before it could be effective. "Sir, we're getting surrender requests from 17 different governments," the aide reported. "They want to know what terms the aliens will accept." North looked at the screens showing her species being harvested like grain. The aliens hadn't bothered with terms or negotiations. They had simply taken what they wanted and ignored everything else. Humanity was learning a harsh lesson about their place in the universe, but North had studied military history her entire career. She knew that sometimes the greatest victories came from the most desperate defeats. The aliens had made an assumption about humanity that might prove to be their downfall. They thought humans would break like every other species they had encountered. They were about to learn that humans were the only species on Earth to survive every mass extinction event in their planet's history. They were about to discover that pushing humanity to the edge of extinction was the one thing guaranteed to make them more dangerous, not less. The Korthak had struck first, expecting easy prey. Instead, they had just awakened something that had been sleeping in the human spirit for thousands of years. The age of easy conquest was about to end, and Commander Vorth had no idea what he had started. 3 months after the first Korthak bioship had descended upon Earth, Commander Vorth found himself facing something that had never happened in 3 centuries of conquest. The humans were still fighting back. Every other species had surrendered. By now, their populations processed and their worlds stripped of resources. But Earth continued to resist. The reports from the surface made no sense. Human resistance groups were operating in every major city, using tactics that should have been impossible for a species that had never faced alien invasion before. They struck at night, disappeared before the Korthak could respond, and somehow they were getting stronger instead of weaker. "Sir, we lost another harvest pod in the European sector," his second officer reported. "The humans used some kind of explosive device that destroyed the bio-neural network. The pod is completely dead." Vorth studied the tactical display with growing unease. Red marks indicated failed harvest operations, and there were far too many of them. The humans were learning to fight back in ways that defied everything the Korthak understood about conquered species. Dr. Marcus Webb had been working on theoretical physics before the invasion. Now he spent his days in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath London, surrounded by pieces of alien technology that his team had salvaged from crashed bioships. Every fragment was studied, tested, and understood with a speed that surprised even him. "Look at this neural interface," Webb said to his assistant, holding up a piece of organic circuitry. "It's not just biological. The aliens are using quantum entanglement to control their ships. Their thoughts are literally connected to their technology." The implications were staggering. The Korthak bioships weren't just vehicles, they were extensions of their pilots' minds. Every ship was connected to every other ship through quantum networks that allowed instant communication across any distance. It was technology that humanity had only theorized about, and the aliens were using it like a basic tool, but Webb had also discovered something else. The neural interfaces weren't species-specific. They were designed to work with any intelligent brain that could process quantum information. The Korthak had built their technology to be adaptable, allowing them to use captured minds to enhance Their own systems. They're not just harvesting us for labor, Webb realized. They're planning to use our brains to make their ships smarter. Above ground, former Marine Captain Lisa Torres was putting Webb's discoveries to practical use. She had organized the scattered military remnants into something new, guerrilla cells that operated like antibodies in an infected organism. Every time the Korthek tried to establish a foothold, her fighters would attack from unexpected angles. The key was mobility. The aliens expected conquered species to huddle in their cities, easy targets for mass harvesting. Instead, Torres had spread her forces across the countryside, using knowledge of local terrain that the Korthek couldn't match. Her fighters moved through forests, underground tunnels, and abandoned buildings like ghosts. Remember, we're not trying to win battles, Torres told her team leaders. We're trying to make them pay for every human they take. Make them work for it, make them afraid. The strategy was working better than she had dared hope. Korthek harvest operations that should have taken hours were stretching into days. Bioships that ventured too close to the surface were being damaged by weapons that shouldn't have existed. Human fighters were learning to use captured alien technology with terrifying speed. The breakthrough came when Torres' team successfully boarded a damaged Korthek transport. The bioship had been forced down by a surface-to-air missile, its pilot injured but alive. What they found inside changed everything. The ship's systems were still active, pulsing with organic light that seemed to respond to their presence. When one of Torres' fighters touched the neural interface, the ship's weapons systems activated. The humans' thoughts were being translated into commands that the alien technology could understand. "It's like the ship wants to be controlled," the fighter reported. "I can feel its systems responding to my thoughts." Torres understood immediately. The Korthek had built their technology to be operated by any intelligent mind. They had never considered that their conquered species might turn that technology against them. The aliens' greatest strength was about to become their greatest weakness. Within weeks, human resistance cells were operating captured bioships throughout the planet. The organic vessels responded to human neural patterns as if they had been designed for them. But more importantly, the ship's quantum communication networks were still active. Connecting human fighters to the larger Korthek fleet. Webb worked frantically to understand the implications. The human fighters weren't just stealing alien ships, they were gaining access to the entire Korthek command structure. Every bioship was connected to every other bioship through quantum networks that the aliens couldn't disconnect without crippling their own forces. "We're not just fighting them anymore," Webb explained to Admiral North during one of their encrypted communications. "We're learning to think like them. Every ship we capture gives us more access to their technology, their tactics, their plans." The Korthek began to notice the pattern. Their harvest efficiency was declining rapidly. Ships that should have collected thousands of humans were returning with hundreds. Ground forces were being ambushed by humans using weapons that matched their own technology. Most disturbing of all, some of their bioships were going silent. Their neural networks compromised by unknown interference. Commander Vorth called an emergency meeting of his senior officers. The holographic display showed Earth's surface marked with red zones where Korthek forces had been attacked. The pattern was spreading like an infection. "The humans are adapting faster than any species we've encountered," he said. "They're not just resisting, they're learning. They're turning our own technology against us?" His second officer disagreed. "Impossible. Their neural patterns are too primitive for our bioships. They lack the quantum processing ability to interface with our systems," but the evidence was undeniable. Human fighters were piloting captured bioships with skill that matched trained Korthek pilots. They were using quantum communication networks to coordinate attacks across the planet. Most frightening of all, they were improving their techniques with every engagement. The humans had done something that no other species had managed in 3 centuries of Korthek conquest. They had turned the invasion into a learning experience. Every attack taught them something new about their enemies. Every captured ship gave them access to more alien technology. Every defeat made them stronger. Commander Vorth stared at the tactical display and felt something he had never experienced before. For the first time in his military career, he was beginning to doubt that the Korthik would win this war. The humans were not just surviving, they were evolving. And evolution, he was beginning to understand, was the most dangerous weapon in the universe. 6 months after the initial invasion, the Korthik made a discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about warfare. The humans were no longer just defending themselves, they were hunting. The scattered resistance had evolved into something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that learned from every defeat and grew stronger with each loss. Captain Torres crouched in the bio-corridors of the Korthak command ship, her face hidden behind a mask crafted from alien chitin. Around her, 5 other fighters moved like shadows through the organic passages. They had spent weeks studying captured Korthik, learning their biology, their weaknesses, their deepest fears. Now they were using that knowledge to turn the aliens' own ship against them. The bio-ship's corridors pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that would have terrified any normal human. But Torres and her team were no longer normal humans. They had adapted to think like their enemies, to move through alien environments as if they belonged there. The ship's immune system recognized them as Korthik, allowing them to pass undetected through areas that should have been impossible to breach. "The bridge is 50 meters ahead," Torres whispered into her comm unit. "Remember, we need the commander alive. Dr. Webb says the neural interface requires a living pilot." The plan was simple but brilliant. Instead of trying to destroy the Korthak command ship, they would capture it. The bioship's quantum communication system would give them access to the entire Korthik fleet. Every order, every tactical plan, every strategic decision would be theirs to monitor and manipulate. They moved through the ship's neural pathways like a virus, following the organic conduits that carried commands from the bridge to the rest of the vessel. The Korthak had never imagined that another species might learn to navigate their bioships better than they could. They had built their technology to be perfect, never considering that perfection might be turned against them. The bridge erupted in chaos as the humans emerged from the ship's own neural network. Commander Vorth spun around to see 6 figures in biosuits that looked exactly like Korthik equipment. For a moment, he couldn't understand what he was seeing. Then one of the figures removed its helmet, revealing a human face beneath. "Surrender your ship," Torres said in perfect Korthak. "Your harvest is over." The bridge crew reached for their weapons, but the humans were faster. Energy blasts filled the air, but these weren't the crude human weapons the Korthik had grown accustomed to. These were Korthik weapons, improved and enhanced by human ingenuity. The aliens found themselves outgunned by their own technology. Commander Vorth watched in horror as his officers fell to weapons crafted from Korthik bone and powered by their own bioenergy. The humans had become parasites, using the Dominion's own technology against them. But the real horror came when the ship's systems began responding to the human neural patterns. Dr. Webb had made a discovery that would change the course of the war. Human brains weren't just compatible with Korthik technology, they were superior to it. Where Korthik minds were specialized for warfare and conquest, human minds were adaptable, creative, capable of seeing solutions that had never occurred to their original designers. "Neural interface is active," one of Torres' fighters reported. "I can feel the ship's systems responding to my thoughts." The captured bioship turned its weapons on the Korthik fleet, but instead of destroying them, it began transmitting something far more dangerous. Every tactical manual, every strategic plan, every technical specification in the ship's memory banks was being broadcast to human resistance cells across the planet. The effect was immediate and devastating. Within hours, every human fighter on Earth had access to complete schematics of Korthik technology. The bioships that had seemed invincible were suddenly vulnerable to attacks that targeted their specific weaknesses. The weapons that had terrified humanity were being reproduced in underground workshops around the world, but the humans didn't stop there. They began improving the alien technology, finding flaws that the Korthik had never noticed. Bioships that had been perfect for 3 centuries were suddenly obsolete, outclassed by human modifications that made them faster, stronger, and more efficient. Commander Vorth found himself a prisoner on his own ship, watching helplessly as human technicians worked alongside reprogrammed Korthek drones. The bioship that had been his pride was being transformed into something that surpassed anything the Dominion had ever created. "You don't understand," Vorth said to Torres. "We are the apex predators of this galaxy. We have conquered 47 worlds. No species has ever defeated us." Torres looked at him with something that might have been pity. "You made a mistake," she said. "You assumed we would break like all the others. You thought humans were just another prey species. The truth was more complicated than that. The Korthek had indeed conquered 47 worlds, but they had always fought species that were similar to themselves. They had never encountered a species that could adapt faster than they could respond. They had never faced an enemy that learned from every defeat and grew stronger with each setback. Humans were different. They were the only species on Earth to survive every mass extinction event in their planet's history. They had evolved not just to survive, but to thrive in the face of impossible odds. The Korthek invasion had triggered something deep in the human psyche, an evolutionary response that turned every challenge into an opportunity. The captured command ship became the flagship of a new human fleet. Bioships that had once terrorized the Outer Rim were now piloted by humans who understood their technology better than their creators. The organic vessels responded to human neural patterns as if they had been designed for them, their quantum communication networks now serving human interests. Dr. Webb worked frantically to understand the implications of their success. The humans weren't just stealing alien technology, they were evolving it. Every bioship they captured was being improved, enhanced, and adapted to human needs. The Korthek technology was becoming something new, something that combined alien capability with human creativity. "We're not just fighting them anymore," Webb explained to Admiral North. "We're becoming them, but we're becoming a better version of them." The Korthek fleet began to retreat, but they found no sanctuary. The humans had learned to track their quantum signatures, to follow them across space using the aliens' own navigation systems. The bioships that had once been the Dominion's greatest strength were now broadcasting their locations to every human ship in the growing fleet. Commander Vorth watched his empire crumble from the bridge of his captured ship. The humans had done more than defeat the Korthek, they had absorbed them. The technology, the tactics, the very essence of what had made the Dominion powerful was now serving human interests. "What are you going to do with us?" he asked Torres. She looked at him with those cold human eyes that had learned to see the universe as a battlefield. "We're going to give you a choice," she said. "Join us or face extinction. The age of easy conquest is over. The age of humanity has begun." The message was clear. The Korthek had struck first, expecting to find easy prey. Instead, they had created the galaxy's new apex predators. And humanity was just getting started. 1 year after the invasion began, the Korthek Dominion faced something that had never happened in their 3-century reign of terror. They were losing a war against the species they had marked for extinction. The humans had not only survived their first contact with hostile aliens, they had evolved their entire civilization in response to the threat. Admiral Rebecca North stood on the bridge of the captured flagship, now renamed the Defiance. The bioship responded to her thoughts as if it had been grown specifically for her. Around her, human technicians worked alongside reprogrammed Korthek drones, creating hybrid technologies that surpassed anything either species had achieved alone. The bridge itself was a marvel of human engineering. The organic Korthek systems had been enhanced with human modifications, creating interfaces that were both intuitive and powerful. Neural pathways that had once carried alien thoughts now pulsed with human creativity, turning the ship into something that was more than the sum of its parts. "Ma'am, Dr. Webb is reporting from the research lab," her communications officer said. "He says he's made a breakthrough." North nodded, her attention focused on the tactical display that showed the current state of the war. Red markers indicated Korthak positions, while blue markers showed human forces. The pattern was clear even to a casual observer. The humans were winning, and they were winning decisively. Dr. Webb had spent months studying the quantum communication networks that connected every Korthak bioship. What he discovered changed everything about how the war would be fought. The aliens had built their entire fleet around the concept of shared consciousness, with every ship linked to every other ship through quantum entanglement. "Admiral, we've cracked their communication network," Webb reported, his voice filled with excitement. "Every ship in the Dominion fleet is connected through quantum links. We can access their entire command structure." The implications were staggering. The bioships that had made the Korthak unstoppable were now vulnerabilities. The networks that allowed instant communication across the galaxy could be hacked, controlled, and turned against their creators. The aliens had built their empire on a foundation that humans could now manipulate at will. "Show me," North said. Webb brought up a holographic display that showed the quantum connections between Korthak ships. The network looked like a vast web stretching across the galaxy, with each ship represented by a glowing node. Lines of quantum energy connected every vessel to every other vessel, creating a communication system that was both instantaneous and absolute. "We can send false orders through their network," Webb explained. "We can make their ships turn on each other. We can access their strategic plans before they're implemented. We can turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness." Captain Torres was already putting the new intelligence to use. Her fleet of captured bioships moved through space like a pack of predators, guided by human tactical thinking and powered by alien technology. The Korthak found themselves facing their own vessels, their own weapons, their own strategies refined and improved by minds that refused to accept defeat. The assault on the Korthak staging area in the asteroid belt was a masterpiece of human warfare. Torres had studied every battle the aliens had fought over the past 3 centuries, learning from their victories and their few defeats. She understood their psychology, their tactics, their weaknesses better than they understood themselves. "Remember, we're not just fighting them," Torres told her fleet commanders. "We're teaching them. Every battle shows them that their age of dominance is over." The bioships moved through the asteroid field like living creatures, their organic HULs adapting to the environment in ways that mechanical ships never could. But these weren't Korthak vessels anymore. They were human ships, piloted by human minds that had learned to think in ways the aliens never could. Commander Vorth watched his fleet being destroyed by his own technology. The neural networks that had once been the Korthak's greatest advantage now carried a virus of human ingenuity. Every ship that tried to communicate with the command structure was infected with human tactical data, turning them into unwitting allies of their enemies. "Sir, our ships are turning on each other," his tactical officer reported. "The neural networks are compromised. We're receiving orders that contradict our mission parameters." Vorth understood what was happening. The humans had learned to think like Korthak, to communicate through quantum networks, to manipulate bioship systems from within. They had become something that was part human, part alien, and entirely dangerous, but it was the message that followed that truly broke the Korthak spirit. Admiral North's voice echoed through every bioship in the fleet, carried by their own communication networks. Her words were translated into every language the Dominion had ever encountered, broadcast on frequencies that reached every corner of the galaxy. "You came to harvest us," North's voice said. "You treated us like animals. You thought we would break like all the others. Now you know what it means to be prey." The surviving Korthak ships began to retreat, but they found no sanctuary. The humans had learned to track their quantum signatures, to follow them across space using the aliens' own navigation systems. Every bioship that tried to escape was broadcasting its location to the human fleet through the very networks that had once made the Dominion invincible. The war was effectively over. The Korthak fleet was in full retreat, their command structure compromised, their technology turned against them. But the humans weren't content to simply drive them away. They had learned something important about the universe during their year of warfare. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the human fleet," the sensor officer reported. "They're not pursuing us. They're doing something else." Vorth looked at the tactical display and felt his blood turn to ice. The humans weren't just winning the war, they were transforming it. The bioships that had once terrorized the galaxy were being converted into something new, something that combined alien capability with human creativity. The message was clear to every species in the galaxy. Earth's children had not just survived their first contact with hostile aliens. They had evolved into something that made their enemies look like prey animals. The age of easy conquest was over, and humanity was just getting started. "What do we do now?" his second officer asked. Vorth looked at the retreating remnants of his once mighty fleet. "We run," he said. "We run, and we hope they don't follow us." But deep down, he knew that hope was futile. The humans had learned to hunt across the galaxy, and they had very long memories. The Korthek Dominion had ruled through fear for 3 centuries, but now they were the ones who were afraid. The hunters had become the hunted, and their prey was no longer content to simply survive. The age of humanity had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 2 years after the first Korthek bioship had descended upon Earth, the galaxy had a new apex predator. Humanity had not just survived their first contact with hostile aliens. They had evolved into something that made the Korthek Dominion look like frightened prey animals. The war had ended not with victory in the traditional sense, but with humanity's ascension to a level of power that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Rebecca North stood in the command center of Terra Nova, humanity's first off-world military base built from the remains of the Korthek staging area. The facility stretched across 3 asteroids, connected by bio-corridors that pulsed with human-controlled neural networks. Around her, humans worked alongside reformed Korthek, the former conquerors now serving as advisors and technicians in. The new order. The view from the command center was spectacular. Bioships that had once terrorized the outer rim now served human crews, their organic systems enhanced by human technology and powered by human determination. The vessels moved through space with a grace that mechanical ships could never match. But they were no longer purely alien. They were something new, something that combined the best of both species. "Ma'am, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different star systems," Dr. Webb reported. His research team had expanded to include alien scientists from a dozen species, all working together to understand the implications of what humanity had become. Word is spreading about what happened to the Korthek. The galaxy had indeed taken notice. The species that had once been marked for harvesting had become the hunters, and every predator civilization in the known universe was reconsidering their expansion plans. The message was clear and simple. Earth's children were not prey, and anyone who thought otherwise would learn the same lesson the Korthek had learned. Captain Torres commanded the first human exploration fleet, a group of enhanced bioships that were spreading out to make contact with the galaxy's survivors. But these weren't missions of conquest in the traditional sense. They were expeditions of protection, designed to establish humanity as the guardian of species that couldn't defend themselves. "Ma'am, we've made contact with the Veldari refugees," Torres reported from her flagship. "They're requesting protection from the Korthek survivors who have been raiding their colonies," North nodded, understanding the implications. The Korthek Dominion had collapsed, but scattered groups of their former soldiers were still operating throughout the galaxy. These remnants were desperate, dangerous, and driven by the same arrogance that had led to their downfall. They needed to be dealt with before they could establish new bases of operation. "Approved," North said. "Show them what happens to species that prey on the innocent." The irony was not lost on her. The Korthek had sought to harvest humanity's neural patterns to enhance their own capabilities. Instead, they had awakened something that absorbed their technology, their tactics, their very essence, and transformed it into something unprecedented. The humans had become what the Korthek had always claimed to be, the galaxy's apex predators. But humanity's evolution hadn't stopped with military superiority. The bioships that had once been used for conquest were now being converted into mobile research facilities, exploration vessels, and diplomatic platforms. The technology that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries was being used to heal the damage that the Korthak had inflicted. Dr. Webb had established research stations throughout the solar system, each one staffed by scientists from dozens of different species. The quantum communication networks that had once carried orders for mass harvesting now carried knowledge, discoveries, and innovations that benefited everyone. The infrastructure of oppression had become the foundation of cooperation. We're making progress on the bioship regeneration project, Webb reported to North. The Korthak technology can be programmed to repair damaged ecosystems, restore extinct species, and even terraform dead worlds. We're not just building weapons anymore, we're building tools for creation. The transformation was remarkable. Bioships that had once carried harvest pods now carried seeds, genetic samples, and terraforming equipment. The living vessels could adapt to any environment, making them perfect for restoration work on worlds that had been stripped bare by centuries of Korthak exploitation on Earth. The effects of the war were still visible, but the planet was healing. The cities that had been damaged by the initial invasion were being rebuilt with hybrid technology that combined human engineering with alien biotechnology. Buildings grew like living things, adapting to their environment and responding to the needs of their inhabitants, but the most significant change was in humanity itself. The species that had once been confined to a single world now commanded a fleet that spanned the galaxy. Humans were serving as diplomats, explorers, scientists, and peacekeepers on thousands of worlds. They had become the stabilizing force that the galaxy had been missing for centuries. "Sir, we're detecting incoming ships," the sensor officer reported. "They're transmitting Korthak identification codes." North felt her muscles tense, but the tactical display showed something unexpected. The approaching vessels were transmitting surrender signals, their bioships moving slowly and defensively. These weren't raiders or refugees, these were Korthak, who had decided to join the new order rather than fight it. "Ma'am, they're requesting permission to dock," the communications officer said. "They say they want to serve under human command." North considered the request carefully. The Korthak who had survived the war fell into 2 categories: those who continued to fight and those who had chosen to adapt. The fighters were becoming extinct, hunted down by human forces that understood their technology better than they did. The adapters were finding new roles in the post-war galaxy. "Granted," North said, "but they follow human protocols. They serve human interests, they protect human values." The former Korthak warriors who joined the human fleet brought with them centuries of military experience and knowledge of the galaxy's dangers. But they also brought something more valuable, proof that even the most warlike species could change. When faced with a superior force that offered them a choice between extinction and evolution. As North watched the bioships dock with Terra Nova, she reflected on how much had changed since that first day when the aliens had appeared in Earth's skies. The Korthak had come expecting to find easy prey, another species to be harvested and processed. Instead, they had found their masters. The galaxy was entering a new age, one where predator species would think twice before attacking innocent worlds. Humanity had established itself as the ultimate deterrent, a species that would protect the weak and punish those who preyed upon them. "Ma'am, incoming priority transmission from the Outer Rim," the communications officer announced. "It's from Captain Torres." The main screen activated, showing Torres standing on the bridge of her bioship with what appeared to be delegates from several different species behind her. Her expression was serious but satisfied, the look of someone who had accomplished something important. "Admiral, we've successfully negotiated a mutual defense pact with the Centauri Alliance," Torres reported. 12 star systems have agreed to join our protection network. They're offering resources and territory in exchange for security against predator species, North smiled. This was exactly what she had hoped would happen. Instead of ruling through fear like the Korthak, humanity was building an empire based on cooperation and mutual benefit. Species joined willingly because they saw the advantages of human protection. Any resistance from the local predator species? North asked. The Ravagers tried to intimidate the negotiations, Torres replied. They sent a battle group to demonstrate their power. We demonstrated ours instead. They won't be bothering anyone in this sector again? The message was spreading throughout the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Quantum communication. Networks that had once carried Korthic orders now carried news of humanity's rise to power. Every species knew that Earth's children had defeated the Dominion and absorbed their technology. More importantly, they knew that humans protected their allies and destroyed their enemies with equal efficiency. Dr. Webb approached North with a datapad containing the latest intelligence reports. The information painted a picture of a galaxy in transition, with old power structures crumbling and new alliances forming around human influence. Admiral, we're tracking 17 different Korthak remnant groups, Webb said. Most are in full retreat, but 3 are trying to establish new bases in unexplored regions. Should we pursue them? North considered the question carefully. The surviving Korthak were no longer a threat to Earth, but they could still cause problems for other species. More importantly, allowing them to rebuild would send the wrong message to other potential predators. Deploy hunter-killer groups to track them down, North decided. We end this threat permanently. No one who participated in the harvest of innocent species gets to start over somewhere else. The orders went out immediately, transmitted through quantum networks to human ships throughout the galaxy. Bio-vessels that had once served the Dominion now hunted their former masters with ruthless efficiency. The Korthak who had chosen exile over surrender would find no refuge in the darkness between stars. But the real measure of humanity's success wasn't in their military victories. It was in the civilizations that were beginning to flourish under human protection. Worlds that had been stripped bare by Korthak harvesting were being restored to life. Species that had been driven to near extinction were recovering their populations and rebuilding their cultures. The bioships that had once carried harvest pods now carried teachers, doctors, engineers, and scientists. Human knowledge was being shared freely with any species that requested it. The technology that had made the Korthak invincible was now being used to heal the wounds they had inflicted on the galaxy. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from Earth, the communications officer announced. It's from the World Council. North accepted the transmission, curious about what the planetary government wanted. The relationship between Earth and the expanding human empire was still being defined, but cooperation had been the rule so far. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to President Chun, the elected leader of Earth's unified government. Behind him, North could see the rebuilt skyline of New Geneva, where bioarchitecture grew alongside traditional human construction. Admiral, I wanted to personally thank you for what you've accomplished, Chun said. 2 years ago, we were facing extinction. Now, we're the dominant force in the galaxy. The people of Earth will never forget what you and your crews have done. North felt a moment of pride, but also responsibility. Humanity had gained incredible power in a very short time, and power came with obligations. They had become the guardians of the galaxy, whether they wanted the job or not. Mr. President, we're just getting started, North replied. The galaxy is full of species that need protection, and we're the only ones strong enough to provide it. This is humanity's destiny. As the transmission ended, North looked out at the bioships moving through space around Terra Nova. Each vessel represented a victory over the forces of oppression, a step toward a galaxy where the strong protected the weak instead of preying upon them. The Korthak had struck first, expecting to harvest another helpless species. Instead, they had awakened the universe's new apex predators. Humanity had risen from the edge of extinction to become the dominant force in the galaxy, and they were using that power to build something better than what had come before. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of human protection had begun. And across the galaxy, innocent species could finally sleep peacefully, knowing that Earth's children were watching over them with weapons that had once belonged to their enemies. The message was clear to every predator species in the universe. Humanity protected its own, and humanity's definition of its own was expanding to include anyone who needed protection. The hunters had become the protectors, and the galaxy was a safer place because of it.